Believing that Jesus rose from the dead isn't just a leap of faith, it's a full sprint off a cliff. You're asked to believe that a man was executed, stayed dead for 3 days, and then just got up, talked to people, ate with them, walked around like nothing happened, and then floated into the sky. That's not a footnote. That's the foundation of Christianity. And the entire thing rests on that moment being real. If one part of it falls apart, the whole belief system starts to collapse. So let's stop treating it like it's off limits. Let's actually look at it. Start with the basics. The Messiah. Because Jesus wasn't just supposed to be a teacher or a healer. He was claimed to be the one that Jewish prophecy pointed to, but the Jewish scriptures were clear about what the Messiah would do. Rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, end war, bring peace, gather all Jews back to Israel, sit on David's throne, and rule forever. That was the checklist. And Jesus didn't check any of those boxes. He didn't rebuild the temple. Rome destroyed it 40 years later. He didn't bring peace. The world kept turning, full of violence and pain. He didn't reclaim Israel. The Jews were scattered. And he definitely didn't reign forever. He was arrested, beaten, and executed. So instead of admitting that he didn't fit the job description, early Christians rewrote it. They said his kingdom was spiritual, that he'd come back later to finish the job. But when you move the goalposts like that, it's not prophecy anymore. It's just damage control. Now let's talk about the tomb. The Gospels say he was buried in a private tomb owned by a man named Joseph of Arimathea. But that's not how Roman executions worked. Crucifixion was a warning. It was slow, brutal, public. Bodies were left to rot, picked apart by animals. And when they were taken down, they weren't honored. They were dumped. Mass graves, common pits, unmarked soil. Pilate didn't hand bodies over out of kindness. He was infamous for cruelty. The idea that Jesus' body was carefully placed in a brand new tomb, it doesn't fit the historical record. And Joseph of Arimathea? There's no mention of him anywhere outside the Bible. Not in Jewish records, not in Roman history. He appears just long enough to solve a narrative problem and then vanishes. If Jesus wasn't laid in a tomb, then there was never an empty tomb to find. That brings us to the resurrection itself. The story says his followers found the tomb empty, that they saw him alive. But think about where they were. Their leader was dead. The movement was falling apart. Everything they believed in was crumbling. And in that kind of moment, grief, fear, panic, people reach for anything that gives them hope. So they rewrote the story. They said the death was part of the plan, that it was a sacrifice, that Jesus wasn't defeated, he was victorious. They reframed failure into fulfillment. And just like that, the Messiah who didn't deliver became the Savior who rose. But even that story isn't consistent. Every gospel tells it differently. Who went to the tomb? Depends on which one you read. Was it 2 women? 3? Just Mary? Was there 1 angel? 2? A man? Was Jesus already there, or did he show up later? Even the earliest version of Mark ends without any resurrection appearance at all. The part where Jesus shows up? That was added. If this really happened and real people saw it, how do you mess up the basics? You don't forget who was there or what they saw. Unless it wasn't about memory. It was about mythology. And then there's the silence. No Roman records. No mentions in Jewish history. No outsider documentation. Nothing. Not one scroll, not one report. Just Christian texts written decades later by people who already believed it was true. Even Paul, the earliest Christian writer, never mentions an empty tomb. He talks about visions, revelations, dreams. That's not history, that's theology. So what are we left with? A Messiah who didn't fulfill the prophecies. A burial story that doesn't fit the culture or the history. A resurrection with contradictory accounts. And no outside evidence. None. The resurrection wasn't a historical event. It was a narrative patch. A way to keep the story going when all signs pointed to the end. A reinvention, not a revelation. And the fact that it worked, spread across continents, shaped empires, still believed by billions, doesn't make it real. It just makes it effective. Thanks for watching. See you next time.